Hey team, what's up? Hey, sorry we're a little bit delayed with the shop talk today. Had just some stuff going on this morning, but that's out of the way and behind me. So today let's talk about stance. And if you see the title of this video, it says there is no such thing as stance, but let's talk about it anyway. All right, so I'll give folks a moment here to jump in. I just got back from a little trip, a little bit of vacation to Idaho. I needed a little bit of time away from things after slaving away for Concealed Carry Expo and whatnot. Plus we had some family activities we wanted to be a part of. Hello Matt, thanks for watching from Arizona. I may be in Arizona soon, very soon. Yeah, actually working on a little bit of a project that may take me down to Arizona. So we'll see how that comes out or comes together. Hello, Bill. Thanks for joining. Elke, thanks for joining as well, sir. So, hopefully everybody's doing well. Yeah, I'm glad to be back in the groove of things somewhat. I'm working on getting caught up on some stuff. Good to be back in the warehouse. Boys have been busy shipping stuff, slaving away. So, hey, real quick, guys, I just wanted to mention that we have a YouTube channel, all right? So, I don't know if you're subscribed, but if you're not, you should go check it out, all right? So, go onto YouTube, search concealedcarry.com, write it out, Concealed Carry, D-O-T-C-O-M, and hit the subscribe button. We'd appreciate that very much. We're not terribly far away from hitting 10,000 subscribers, and we got a couple thousand to go. But would love to hit that 10,000 mark. That'd be really sweet. So anyway, it'd be awesome if you'd go and subscribe. All right, a lot of other great video content available on our YouTube channel. These shop talks get published there as well, so it'd be another place where you can go and find these kind of in an archive fashion. Of course, you can always find shop talk episodes at concealedcarry.com/shop talk as well. All right. Hello, John. Thanks for joining. And Bud, Jerry, Bill says he's up to episode 10 of the podcast, the Concealed Carry podcast. That is good for you, Bill. I haven't listened to those early episodes for so long. I'd be almost afraid to go back and do so. Yeah, episode 10. That one. Was that one I did with Brandon? I can't remember. That's been a long time ago. What's new today, Rich? What's new today? Well, we've got some rain going on in the Denver area. Supposedly some severe weather later today, this afternoon, so we'll see how that pans out. That would be what's new. I see that Mitch got posted a link to make it really easy just to go right to our YouTube channel and subscribe, so please do so. All right, so let's get after it. Diane asks the question, what are we discussing today? Diane, great question. What we're discussing today is there is no such thing as stance. All right? There's no such thing. In fact, when I was being brought up in the shooting sports, being taught how to first handle and shoot a gun, that was actually the very first thing I think that was probably mentioned to me. Riley, put your feet like this, put your hands like this, stand like that. That's where a lot of people began with their initial firearm training. Okay, and a lot of firearms instructors also start there because probably, and through no fault of their own, but a lot of them are NRA instructors, and the NRA curriculum starts with stance. After you get past the safety part, right? So you get past, talking and teaching about safety and a few other things, and then you talk about the 7 fundamentals of shooting. And the very first one is stance. So, and the way that's even presented is, well, if you're shooting a pistol, there's either Weaver stance or there's isosceles. That's pretty much how it's presented. And there is just no such thing, guys. So that's what we'll be talking about. 10 was the accuracy benefits of a musket over throwing rocks. Yep, that goes back a ways. Thanks for joining from Indiana, Howard. And hello, Gary, also from Indiana. Good to have you. All right, so let's get into it, shall we? All right, today there's no special deal we're promoting. We're just asking you to go and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right, really easy, guys. So we hope that you'll do that. All right, so let's talk about why I'm saying that there is no such thing as stance. Why? Okay, well, and the reason why is because I could do a very simple demonstration for you. You know what? Let's just do a demonstration, and that should tell you just about everything you need to know. So I'm actually going to raise this camera up a little bit, and we're going to angle it down. And I'm going to actually might have to take it up a little bit higher. All right, so bear with me as I am my own camera crew. See how messy the floor is here. There we go. So now you can kind of see, I might scoot this back just a touch. I want you to be able to see as much as possible kind of what my feet are doing and everything else, all right? So, stance, right? So again, the traditional way of teaching things, particularly where it comes to handgun shooting, is, well, there's a Weaver stance. And what does that look like? Now I've got my Glock 17 here with barrel block installed, okay, for safety. I've also got a Glock E trainer just so I can do some trigger manipulations over and over without having to rack the slide. All right, so traditionally folks would teach the Weaver stance. So Weaver stance, you actually angle your body. You know what, I'll go left-handed stance just so you can see this a little bit better. So I'm going lefty. You know what I just realized? I realized I forgot to mirror the camera. I apologize for that. We'll just have to deal with it today. Or reverse the mirroring anyway. So isosceles, so this actually will look right-handed to you, or I meant Weaver. So you're actually going to turn your body about 30 degrees off of center from the target. So if I'm facing the target, here's 0 degrees. I'm going to turn to where the center line of my body is about 30 degrees off of my target. Okay? And then I am going to meet up my two hands, okay? And my non-dominant hand, my support hand, is going to be, we're going to have that elbow bent a little bit more, all right? And my other elbow is also slightly bent, okay? And there is our classic Weaver stance, okay? If I'm doing anything wrong, some of you true believers of the Weaver stance, I apologize because I am not a Weaver stance shooter. So if I got something just a little bit off, forgive me because it's not really my thing. Hey, Charlie, thanks for joining. James from Michigan, Barry from New York. Thanks for joining, guys. Okay, so there's the Weaver stance, right? All right. So, one really critical thing because of the way my arms and my hands and everything are working together, for me to really stabilize the gun, something that's really critical to do is to do what they call the push-pull technique. So that's where I am pushing forward with my dominant or shooting hand, and I'm pulling back into that with my support hand. So I'm getting some stabilization by pushing and pulling and locking those two together. Okay? A couple of things with that. It's not a bad way necessarily of managing recoil in a gun. It actually can be quite effective when done correctly. When it's done incorrectly, it actually doesn't work very well at all. So because if there's some sort of imbalance between those hands and that push-pull and everything, then you're definitely going to see that in a person's management of their recoil. The other thing is it doesn't, in my opinion, always work as consistently for a variety of positions that you might find yourself in. Okay, so push-pull works really well if you can be in this perfect, ideal Weaver stance. Okay? So that works great. But if we change something up where I need to swing more to this side, if I need to go this way, if I'm shooting in a weird, awkward position, crouch, squatting, prone, whatever, it starts to get a little bit more difficult to maintain that consistent push-pull. And I think also some shooters that rely a lot on the push-pull probably start to rely less on their actual gripping strength on the gun. Okay? So a couple of things there just to be aware of if you're a Weaver shooter, or if you've ever wondered about some pros and cons as it relates to that stance. Now the other common stance that is often taught I'll go ahead and do this left-handed for the camera, which means really right-handed for me. And that is the isosceles stance, where we're standing square to the target. Our feet are perpendicular to that target. If we were drawing a line across our toes, well, it actually would be parallel to our back berm, okay, but it's perpendicular to facing that target. So we're facing at 0 degrees, and essentially both hands and arms are fully extended, and then I should also be leaning into it. Weaver stance, we should also be putting weight forward. Okay, that's something that's really key about any shooting stance, honestly. You need to make sure your weight's forward, all right, as opposed to back. What does that look like? Well, a lot of times I go to the public range or the indoor range near my house, and I'll see a lot of amateur shooters that are leaning back for whatever reason. And it's just because they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what they look like. They don't know what a more effective way of shooting is. It's something that they've not really thought about. Okay, so whether it's isosceles or weaver, see, even with a weaver stance, I can put my weight forward into it some, so I'm putting more of my body, my weight, everything behind the recoil of that gun. Okay, that's really important. But why do I say there is no such thing as stance? All right, so the demonstration I mentioned that I would do that would help illustrate this is quite simple. I kind of gave a hint a moment ago. All right, so the reason I say this is because while this may be the default stance for a lot of people that use the fully arms extended type, arm position or presentation to the target, that's basically how I shoot, both arms extended. I don't go crazy and, make everything super straight and lock those elbows and everything. I go to about here where everything is tensed up. Okay, that seems to work really well for me. But if you like locking those elbows, knock yourself out. I think that having a little bit of a bend there can actually help with managing recoil a little bit. Okay, there's nothing wrong with those arms acting a little bit as shock absorbers. When you have things really locked out, then that recoil is going to go back into the shoulders, into the body. That's not necessarily bad either, because the more recoil we send into the body's a lot bigger mass than just our hands or even our arms. So that's not a bad thing to try to transfer recoil from the hands back into the body. It's actually, there should be some of that taking place. But over time, just with experimenting with different techniques, I'm basically extended, but slight bend there, and everything is just tensed up, okay, muscles wise. All right. Okay, so why do I say there's no one stance, no such thing as stance? Well, because we have to get out of the mindset of thinking like we're constantly on a square range. What does using a gun in a real world environment actually look like? You don't have a stationary target that is constantly in one spot where, well, I'm going to shoot this guy, so I'm going to stand in my isosceles stance, square up to the target, extend those arms, bang, bang, bang. That's not how it works. That target is probably moving, okay? And because he's moving, we have to also move, and we have to adapt, all right? So if my target starts there, but he ends up over here, what's going on there? I'm having to twist the waist. I'm having to turn the feet, the knees, the legs, okay? What if he goes that way? What if he goes down? What if he goes up? What if I need to go down? What if I need to take cover behind something? What if I need to get down behind a vehicle or a short wall? What if this wall is so short or this vehicle is so short and I can't adequately get down below it and shoot over this way? What if I got to get really low and I got to get in some kind of weird, awkward position so I can use that cover effectively and come around it? Okay? As soon as that happens, and then keep in mind, again, my threat's probably moving, so I may need to adapt and move and follow him. There is no such thing as stance as it relates to getting hits on target and maintaining your gun. Maintaining meaning maintaining things positively, managing your recoil. All right, so what's important besides thinking of a stance is thinking about your shooting platform. Now, where this begins for me, thinking about platform is by default, it sort of begins from the hips and goes on up. A couple of things should exist in an effective shooting platform. First of all, I also think, as it relates to that platform, that grip is a part of it. Okay? So we've talked quite a bit on Shop Talk, and in even like in the range talk last week. I talked about it a little bit when I was at the range, and we did the live last week. We've talked quite a bit about grip, all right? So you should know by now that I shoot with what essentially is a thumbs forward grip, full 360-degree coverage around the gun, good contact all up and down the grip for the support hand, good firm grip, master grip there with my shooting dominant hand, okay? All right? So grip is a part of that shooting platform. Having arms tensed in such a way that the gun is maintained, right, that we're holding it in position, is a part of that shooting platform. Now, ideally, I like where both arms are about equally extended. Now, they are never truly equal because we have to understand, folks, that when I am gripping a gun, there is, by nature of how that gun is gripped, inequality, okay, between those hands, between those arms. What I mean by that is that if I use a grip like this, whether it's a thumbs forward grip, whether it's a thumbs high grip, I'm always going to have my support hand slightly forward of my shooting hand. Does that make sense? So by nature of that, my support hand is always having to reach just a little bit more. When we have to reach just a little bit more, what does that do? That causes a little bit more tension, because that's my body naturally is going to be pulling back into that gun a little bit more, because I have to go out and around and in front of, and then that hand has got a hold of it, but it's in front of slightly. It may not be very obvious to you, but it is slightly in front of my dominant hand. So if we have a nice, good, arms extended platform, okay, a presentation like this as described, then very naturally I have push-pull taking place, and I don't even have to think about it. All right? And what I'm focused a little bit more on is that I've got that good master grip established, that I index my support hand where it needs to be, and that it locks I lock my fingers into place on the back side of the shooting hand, and I wrap this around, and I'm trying to fill in this empty space as effectively as possible, get as much contact between the support hand and the gun as possible, all right? And then I am clamping down with about as much strength as I can muster, that I can hold for a while. I don't want to be using so much strength that I'm going to tire out in 10 seconds. You got to find that balance where you can grip tightly and hang on to things really effectively, but not wear yourself out, and you can last a few minutes. Okay? Now, if you're not already doing some grip strength exercises, I would encourage you to do that. All right? All of us can improve as it relates to our grip strength. You can pretty much always get stronger and stronger with that grip strength, and it's never going to really be a detriment to you as it relates to your shooting. Okay? So find some of those grip masters, those spring, strength builder things, whatever, and work on that grip strength. Doing curls is another good one. Okay? That's working a lot of the same muscles that are going to work on grip strength. Thought I might gain something, but don't do tactical well. Charles, maybe you could help me understand your comment there. I'm not sure what about we're talking about here today is tactical. All right. So, but maybe you could help me understand, because I definitely want you to gain something from what we're talking about here today. All right. So feel free to comment again. I'd love to hear from you. So anyway, platform. We're talking about shooting platform. I'm working my way from my hands down to my waist. Let me explain further. Okay, so I've got my grip built up on the gun. Okay, I got my arms extended in such a way, whatever way works for you. All right. For me, this is how we do it. I get a little bit of natural push-pull, and I'm combining that with superior grip strength. And my gun is going to be maintained very firmly, very solidly. It's not going to go anywhere. Okay, that's going to allow me to even be a little bit sloppy with the trigger at times. Sometimes we just have to get sloppy. Sometimes you might have to shoot so fast that you're just not really thinking about trigger control. You're just thinking about getting rounds on target fast. Whatever it is, the tighter we grip this gun, the less it moves, the less of an effect, less than ideal trigger control can have on the gun. Does that make sense? So the tighter that we hold that gun, the less it moves, the less important perfect trigger manipulation becomes. Not that we shouldn't work on trigger manipulation. It just means that it becomes less important. And you know what? It's far easier to manage grip strength and all that and hold the gun still than it is to master those little tiny muscles and tendons and things that are making that thing work. If that makes sense. Okay. All right. So moving on back. My shoulders, I'm not doing anything crazy here. I'm just extended to the target. All right. They are slightly rolled forward, but they're not like really rolled forward. They're there. Okay. Back to the waist. What's important from here is that I want to be, again, leaning into it slightly. Okay. We don't have to go crazy. That doesn't necessarily penalize you necessarily, but I think it's a little bit unnatural. All right, so I'm using a more natural lean into the gun, not crazy, just a natural slight leaning forward, putting my weight over the balls of my feet, and that's going to help with that management of the recoil as well. Okay, so shooting platform. So I said ideally it kind of starts from the waist up, and it goes to the arms, it goes to the hands, and what we're doing with the gun. Why is that? What's cool about that? Well, what's cool is whether I'm standing or whether I'm seated, it's exactly the same. You see that? So whether I'm here sitting on this stool, if I'm sitting in the vehicle, my personal vehicle, my truck, my car, or if I'm standing, I change nothing from here to here. Okay? And I like making things simple. So when there's no need to change my grip or my stance because I move from a seated position to a standing position or vice versa, that's a good thing. So if there's no change from here to here and vice versa, other than my elevation is changing, I think that's a good thing. Okay? Now you guys all know me. I draw from the Pennix position. That works great because it works almost equally well from a seated position as it does from a standing position. So again, that's another area where in my life, in my own personal technique, I've tried to simplify the techniques. All right. So again, where did this start? This started from there is no such thing as stance. So continuing to talk about shooting platform. Well, sometimes we might find ourselves in really strange, awkward shooting positions. Okay, so if I had to, again, get really low, I'm using my stool again as an example. Okay, if I had to get down really low to get behind something to use it as cover, now for me to really get, I'm going to cheat a little bit, make that a little bit taller for me. But, I might have to get right down here sit on my heel and get this leg down. Now I can get quite a bit lower to where my head's down below the stool. It might not look like it to you based on the angle of the camera and everything. But basically, I'm down beneath this stool. I'm imagining just some sort of short wall or some kind of small barrier. All right. So let's say I'm trying to use this for cover. I got to get down low. Okay. This is not ideal. Things start to break down. I'm not standing. I'm not sitting. I'm kind of hunched over, leaning around something. Again, what I'm focused on is principles as it relates to how I'm managing my gun. So I'm still trying to make sure that I have that excellent grip, 360-degree coverage, good, firm, tight grip. Where possible, I'm trying to make sure that my arms are somewhat extended. All right? But as I lean down and around, things start to change a little bit. This elbow maybe needs to drop a little bit, or vice versa. So you do what you got to do. But where possible, you try to keep everything about the same. One of the reasons why I got away from a Weaver stance way back in the day is because I felt like when I got off a square range, that Weaver stance had to start changing. So I like to keep things somewhat consistent. So even in that awkward position, even if I have to get down into prone, now I'm going to end up getting my shirt all dirty for this, but let's go ahead and go prone. we go down to prone. Again, it's pretty hard to shoot weaver from this position. And again, it's not even true weaver because I'm not standing. My feet are not angled to the target and all this stuff, right? But what I'm talking about here is like a weaver platform, right? Having this elbow slightly dropped or bent and the other one less so, that sort of thing. Here it becomes almost easier just to keep things somewhat extended. But you will notice that my left arm, in this case, it appears right to you, is bent a little bit more than my right arm. But that's going to change if my target changes, my target moves. If that moves, then I have to start changing things. Okay? You see that? So I can maintain sight picture on my threat. I drop to a prone position. Things have to change. We have to adapt so that we can maintain our eyes, maintain our sight picture on that target, on that threat. So, again, there is no such thing as stance. There is what I think of as shooting platform. And what are the important principles as it relates to that shooting platform? Grip, tensed muscles in the arms, okay, as opposed to things are relaxed and loose, right? And by that, we're trying to tension these tendons in the wrists. We want our wrists to stay locked, okay? It's one of the reasons why I do a thumbs forward grip, okay, because it helps actually with locking those tendons and tensioning, or tensing would be, I guess, another way of saying it. Okay, all right. But whether I need to swing this way, swing that way, get in some weird, awkward position, this almost always works with a few little tweaks as it relates to our elbows bending a little more here and there. Okay, but the principles again are grip. I don't think I got all the way through that. Grip, tense muscles in the arms, okay, locking things in place, locking tendons in place, and then getting your sights on target and doing what you got to do. If you're in an upright position, then where possible, it helps to have the weight forward. So that would be probably the third principle, okay? Grip, tense arm muscles, maybe locked elbows if that's your thing, that's fine, whatever. And then weight forward at the waist where that makes sense to do. Then, you know, this starts to really ring true for students if we run them through what we call the figure eight or other similar drills where basically they're having to walk in like a figure eight. I have a very small space here, but basically they're having to move around in a figure eight or in other random directions. And as they're doing that, their target presentation begins to change and they realize, oh, and my feet are going all kinds of crazy different directions and you know, the way my hips are turned are changing, all this stuff. And it begins to click in your mind. You go, wait a minute. I thought I could only shoot with like Weaver stance or isosceles stance or modified isosceles. All a modified isosceles is, it's all the same, but our feet are changed up. And I can go dominant foot forward. I can go support side foot forward. It doesn't matter because it doesn't affect what's going on with up here in the hands and in the arms. Okay? Bill just got back, see Riley rolling on the floor. That's funny. Not doing the reverse turtle. Let's see. Now, I was hoping Charles would come back and say, you know, what it was. I'm not sure what he was missing out on or what was considered tactical. Spot on and steady, straight to rear trigger squeeze. Quick reset, don't ride it. Yes, we agree absolutely, Elkie. You know, I said earlier that the tighter we can hold that gun, the less that gun moves because of what force we're able to exert on it through our hands and our arms, the less important that trigger manipulation becomes, but it's still a really important thing. But what I find is that a lot of newer shooters or shooters that are just beginning this path where they're starting to figure these things out, they probably have greater success when they actually begin gripping the gun like they should, because it takes, I think, longer to figure out the trigger thing. So that helps you get on a path to success a little bit earlier. And then, as you begin doing more and more reps and more trips to the range, and you begin refining what's going on there with the trigger, then it's going to all start to come together. All right. Maybe next week I'll do a shop talk about Mantis X. I think it's probably about time we talk about that, and that would be a great opportunity to start talking about trigger press and some things we can do to learn how to press the trigger smoothly and straight to the rear. What about those of us that have bifocals or trifocals? It's hard to lean forward when you tilt your head back so much. So Diane, a couple of things here. That is a challenge for sure. It's a challenge when you think, okay, I need to be prepared for everyday life, right? I need to be prepared to use this gun on a daily basis. Well, what do I wear normally? I wear my bifocals or my trifocals. I don't actually, but I'm talking like I'm in your shoes, right? And so that is a challenge, right? Now, what I would say is you should be familiar with leaning the head back and being able to get that sight picture. That should be something that you're familiar with how to do, but it's not the end of the world. Diane, I would encourage you to try to learn how to get a sight picture even if your vision is not perfect. Meaning, chances are the reason you need those bifocals or trifocals is so you can focus on those sights. But there are techniques and there are ways and there are times where you don't necessarily need to have perfect focus on the sights to make your hits. A lot of defensive encounters are going to be at relatively close range. Just putting the back plate of the gun on the center of the chest of the person in front of you, 3, 5, 7 yards away, is probably good enough to get hits in the high center chest on that target. All right? Or just learning good muscle memory to where as you present the gun and you get it extended, that those sights come right to where your eye is. That's another good one. And you might just need to learn to trust that things are where they need to be because you've done it so many times. So to help you learn how to do that, as far as learning that you are actually getting things on target, getting sights aligned the way they need to be, you might need to invest in a set of glasses for shooting, for basically practice situations or training classes or whatever it is, going to the range. You may want to look at getting some glasses that have a bifocal lens, but where the bifocal part is in the upper part of the shooting glasses. All right. You may want to consider getting some glasses for shooting training purposes where one side or the other is set for focusing at different distances and learning to kind of see that those two different planes at the same time. Carl Wren talked about that some in our podcast with him and also in our Guardian Nation Live broadcast. So you may want to go and listen to what he had to say about that. Okay? But so what I would say about you is, Diane, you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage if you are leaning back and having this really awkward, unstable, unsteady shooting position simply because you got to be able to get your head back so you can see your sights through the lower part of the glasses. That's less than ideal. All right, you want to have that weight forward. You want to be balanced, and maybe you need to figure out how to do that. But again, I think there are things you can do and learn and train and practice to get an acceptable sight picture. You may not see things in clarity, but learn how to get an acceptable sight picture considering your own needs for your personal vision. So hopefully that's somewhat helpful for you. All right. Yes, I think Mitch is commenting here with a link, or maybe it's Jacob, talking about the SSP eyewear glasses, and they do make some that have those top focal lenses. And so Carl Wren's not very crazy on those. So if you go back and listen to his episode, you'll hear his opinion on that. And I think everything he said is pretty valid. But that is still something that you look into and get those top focals. And that way you can lean forward and you can look through the top part of the lens. And I think those top focals are a lot more intuitive to use than you would think, especially when you're shooting. And I've seen many shooters use them successfully. And I've also seen shooters do things like what Carl recommends as far as having things dialed in for different distances. Okay? Let's see. Just trying to look at everybody's comments here. John's late. That's cool, brother. You could always go back and watch. What about those of us? Let's see. Oh, that's right. Love this information. I'll be using a few of these tips to help my stances and shooting. That's cool, as long as you understand, Sherry, there is no such thing as stance. Just kidding. And as your arthritis gets worse and can't grip as hard, yeah. So again, but even as arthritis becomes more of an issue, do everything you can to strengthen those hands and strengthen those grips. It's going to pay off for you. Let's see. Point and shoot versus using sights. Todd, yes. There's many different ways that you can get an acceptable sight picture, even though you're not maybe using your sights, at least in the traditional sense, right? So, like one very common thing is to just point into the target, to the body of the target, and basically stick the back plate of the gun. And it basically, if you're focused on the target, so the target's in focus, but then you are blocking out, and you're basically blocking out their body and your vision with the back plate of your gun, and putting the upper part here about where the shoulders are, you're going to hit pretty much where you need to hit. Yes, you can, in theory, have things really out of whack alignment-wise, but as long as you've learned some reasonable amount of good muscle memory as it relates to presenting to the target and having things somewhat lined up, if you just put the back plate in the chest of the person, pull the trigger, you're probably going to hit them. We're talking 3-5 yards, maybe 7 yards. Okay, at that point, it starts to get a little bit trickier. It depends on how good your muscle, the muscle memory is learned. Okay, from all of your presentations. Other things, a lot of times I'm just sort of looking through my sights or looking over my sights a little bit, and I know that they're there, and I know they're generally aligned, and I'm just putting them in the center of where I'm trying to hit. So you say point and shoot, it's still aiming to an extent, it's just a different type of aiming, and that's something that's also important and critical to understand. So we don't completely ignore the gun and just think, okay, I'm going to just point and shoot. We're still kind of seeing things, but seeing things in a different way, if that makes sense. And that's what I was talking about. How much training for point shooting do you do? I don't know that I necessarily do a lot of training for it per se. I just try to learn what's acceptable at certain distances for me based on the particular shot that's being taken. Okay, guys, so if I've got a standard, like a USPSA target, which is fairly representative of, I was thinking I might have one laying around here, but I don't know where it is. It's fairly representative of the size of a human torso. The head is kind of small on it, but whatever. Out to 7 yards, I can kind of point pretty much because I've learned over time, because the muscle memory gets good enough where okay, I'm pointing, you're just aligning things and you're putting them on target. But again, I'm still trying to, where possible, sort of see my sights. I'm sort of looking through them and trying to be aware of them, even though they're all kind of blurry and fuzzy and all that. I'm just being aware of them and putting things in the general location. Now, if I had to go to a headshot at 7 yards, I pretty much at that point got to transition a little bit to using the sights, right? Because point shooting and we're talking about hitting like the A zone on a USPSA target, or hitting that classic triangle, whatever. Yeah, I got to transition to sights at 7 yards. At 5 yards, I can kind of point shoot that pretty well. But anyway, you just got to learn what to see and how to see it for the appropriate distance and size of target that you're trying to shoot. All right. Let's see. We're going to start wrapping it up. Thanks for joining, Andrew. Yeah. Let's see. One would never say they engage in unaimed shooting. Correct. Yes, that's the idea. I'm glad you said that, Elke. That's the key thing. Is it's not that we're just simply pointing the gun and we're not really aiming. We are still aiming. We're just using a different type of aiming. Alrighty, guys. Again, just to kind of recap, there is no such thing as stance. We have to understand that because the nature of the world we live in, and the variety of situations and positions and seated and standing and crouched or whatever it might be, using cover, all this stuff, we've got to understand that pretty much negates the whole point of the classical stance of shooting. So we need to get more focused on learning what is a good shooting platform. All right, and again, that really in my world, in my opinion, that starts with a good, solid, firm grip, a good extension with the arms in some fashion, where things are really locked in and muscles are flexed. We're holding things tightly, and then if possible, weight forward at the waist and up, because that's going to help a little bit. But where that's not possible, we extend as best we can. We get a good firm grip. And then all that really matters at that point is that we can see a good sight picture on our threat. All right. That's all I got to say. If we were talking about long range shooting, then things start to change a little bit as far as we need to have better support, right? Because we got to be more precise at longer distances. We're talking, if I was shooting a rifle at 100, 200, 500 yards, then we actually start to talk a little bit more about kind of stance or positioning of the body and how that's done and different techniques to get good stabilization. But I'm talking here today about defensive shooting, relatively close ranges in a variety of positions. And so guys, go learn that good solid shooting platform, practice it, all right? And strengthen those grips, work on that trigger manipulation, because it is still important too. And that's all I really got to say about that. All right, let's just not get locked into this dogma of I got to stand a certain way and got to hold things a certain way, and if I get out of, because then you're just going to feel really awkward and strange, if you ever have to shoot in a position that's different than that. All right, so practice a lot of different positions, practice a lot of different things, practice awkward stuff where you can. Try getting in and out of positions. And actually, I'll just tease, we're getting ready to film a new video course. It'll be called Fighting from Cover, and it's going to cover a lot about shooting from different positions. So that's something you can look forward to, and you'll hear a lot more about things we've talked about here today in that course. All right. Thanks for today's info, Rye. It's been a while since I've been called Rye. Rye. Thanks for being here, Alfonso. So guys, I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the questions. You guys are great. And so thanks for being here for another Shop Talk today. Again, not promoting any particular product or offering any coupon codes, but we hope that you'll head on over to our YouTube channel and subscribe to the channel. All right, help us reach 10,000. That would be sweet. Mention it to your friends, your family, your coworkers, et cetera, at least the ones that you trust. You're obviously already liking our Facebook page. You're watching us here live on Facebook. But don't forget to tune into the podcast tomorrow noon. We should go live with the podcast tomorrow. I'll be in my home office and should be kind of back in the normal groove of things, at least for a time, for a season. All right, guys, take care. Be safe out there. Don't forget to practice and take a training course or two if you can this summer. All that good stuff. Don't be afraid to put in the work, because it will make a difference. All right, see you later.